All right, so AI. It's like everywhere you look these days, right? From composing music to writing emails, even creating art. But here's the thing. What happens when AI starts messing up? Like seriously messing up?
Well, it's a big question, especially now that we're starting to rely on AI more and more for information.
Exactly. And we've got this BBC study that really dives into AI's accuracy or lack thereof. They took 4 big AI assistants, ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, and Perplexity, and threw 100 questions at them. The catch is, all the questions were based on real BBC News articles, stuff that actually happened.
Yeah, it's really interesting that they used actual news articles as the benchmark for this study because it lets us directly compare the AI's responses to what actually happened, giving us a real sense of how reliable or unreliable these systems actually are.
Let's just say the results were a bit of a wake-up call.
Yeah.
In this deep dive, we're going to unpack just how badly AI can mess up, why it happens, and if there's anything we can actually do about it.
It is important to remember that AI has huge potential, but it is still very early days. We're basically trying to teach machines how to think like humans, and that is not easy.
So let's get into some of the BBC's findings. Brace yourselves for some serious AI fails. For instance, one AI insisted that former UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and Scotland's former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon were still in office.
Yeah, it seems like in this case, the AI was using outdated information and presenting it as current, which is a big challenge. AI's reliance on data that isn't always being updated in real time.
It's like the AI got stuck in a time warp, and it gets even weirder. One AI actually declared TV presenter Michael Mosley dead, which I'm sure is news to him because he is very much alive. And then there was this entirely made-up quote from One Direction's Liam Payne's family grieving his equally non-existent.
It shows another issue. AI has a hard time separating fact from fiction. Like, it grabs random bits of information without actually understanding the context or verifying their accuracy.
Kind of like AI's playing the game of telephone, where the message just gets more and more distorted as it goes along. And these errors can have real-world consequences, too. Right? Like that time when Gemini gave out totally bogus NHS advice about Veda.
Exactly. The potential for harm is real. Especially in areas like health and safety, this really shows how important it is for AI to access and process information accurately.
Speaking of consequences, the BBC also pointed out that these AI slip-ups could make people trust news and factual information even less than they already do.
And that's a valid concern. We're already battling misinformation, and AI inaccuracies just make things worse.
So we've seen AI trip up big time. But what's the root cause of all these errors? Is it bad programming, or is there something else at play?
It's more complicated than just bad code. AI models learn from massive amounts of data, and that data isn't always perfect. It can have errors, outdated information, even societal biases. So what the AI learns might be flawed right from the start.
So kind of like that saying, garbage in, garbage out. If the AI learns from bad information, it's going to produce bad answers.
Exactly. And even with good data, AI still struggles to grasp context and nuance. It can read words, but it doesn't always get the true meaning or see the bigger picture. You can think of it like teaching someone a new language. They might know the words, but they'll have trouble with the subtle things like grammar and expression.
So it's not just about how much data there is, but how that data is interpreted and understood by the AI.
Precisely. And that's where we really need to focus our efforts, improving AI's ability to understand context, nuance, and the constantly changing nature of information.
It makes you wonder if AI is really learning the way we do, or if it's more like a fancy parrot. Yes, mimicking patterns without truly understanding them.
That's a big question, and one that researchers are definitely trying to answer. The key takeaway for us is that AI, as it stands right now, is prone to errors, and those errors can have real-world impacts.
Which leads to the big question. What can we do about it? Are we just stuck with these AI hallucinations?
I don't think so. There are steps we can take. But it needs a multi-pronged approach involving the people developing AI, those of us who use it, and content providers like the BBC.
Okay, let's break that down. What needs to happen on the development side?
Well, developers need to prioritize accuracy. That means constantly tweaking the algorithms, using better data, and implementing ways to catch and correct errors.
So it's not just about building AI that's smart, but also reliable and trustworthy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's going to require collaborating with organizations like the BBC, who have huge archives of verified information and a deep understanding of fact-checking. Imagine what could be done if AI developers tapped into that expertise.
It seems like a partnership is really key. Developers can't work in isolation. They need to connect with the real world and the sources of good information.
You're absolutely right. And for those of us using AI, we need to be more aware of its limitations. Just because something comes from a seemingly smart machine doesn't mean it's automatically true.
So we all need to be a little more skeptical. a bit more discerning about the information we're seeing online, no matter where it comes from.
Exactly. Double-checking information, comparing sources, using our own critical thinking skills. These are more important than ever in this age of AI-generated content.
Now, the BBC is taking this issue pretty seriously. They're really pushing AI companies to be more transparent about how they do things. They want to know how these AI assistants are dealing with news, what data they're using, and how often they make mistakes. They're basically advocating for accountability.
Transparency is key for building trust. You can't expect people to trust these systems if they have no idea how they work.
It sounds like they're pushing for a system where AI companies can't just release these tools without being upfront about their limitations and their potential to make mistakes.
Absolutely. The BBC is also calling for clear guidelines and best practices for how media organizations and AI companies can work together.
Makes sense. We need some kind of framework for how these two worlds can collaborate and ensure that information stays accurate and trustworthy in this digital age. But all of this begs the question, what about us, the everyday users? How do we navigate this AI-driven world and make sure we're not being constantly misled?
That's a great question, and it's one that we'll dig into in the next part of our deep dive.
Welcome back to our deep dive into AI. And you know those moments when it gets things wrong?
Yeah, totally. Feels like a minefield out there. How do we make sure these smart machines aren't leading us astray?
It's a challenge for sure, but I don't think it's impossible. We're all navigating this complex digital world, and there are things we can do to be more discerning.
So give us the tools. What's the first step in protecting ourselves from AI-generated misinformation?
I'd say it starts with a healthy dose of skepticism. Don't automatically believe everything you see online, even if it looks official or comes from a source you usually trust.
So even if an AI spits out a news article that looks totally legit with quotes and stats, it could still be totally fake. AI is great at mimicking human language and style, but it doesn't really understand the meaning behind the words. It can create content that looks convincing, but the information itself might be way off.
Okay. So we can't just take AI-generated content at face value, but how do we actually verify the information? Where do we even start?
That's where good old-fashioned fact-checking comes in. If something seems a little fishy, take some time to double-check it against sources, are reliable.
So we're talking about checking multiple news outlets, official statements, things like that.
Think of it like triangulation. If you see the same information reported across several trustworthy sources, chances are it's accurate.
But what about when you run into conflicting information? Like one AI tells you one thing, another says the opposite, and then a human-written article gives you a third perspective. How do you sift through all that?
That's where those critical thinking skills come in. You need to evaluate the sources themselves. What's their track record? Are they known to have any biases? Are they transparent about their methods?
So it's not just about the facts themselves, but about judging the trustworthiness of whoever's presenting those facts.
Absolutely. Look for red flags, things like obvious bias, hidden agendas, or emotional manipulation. Think about who's giving you the information and whether they have a reason to twist it.
Flick, we have to become internet detectives. Always questioning, evaluating, cross-checking everything.
I like that analogy. Don't be afraid to dig deeper. If something feels off, do some more research. Look for original sources, expert analysis, and different viewpoints.
Speaking of viewpoints, it's so easy to get sucked into those echo chambers online where you only see information that confirms what you already believe. How do we avoid that?
You've got to actively seek out information that challenges your assumptions and presents different perspectives. It's the only way to get a balanced understanding of any issue.
Like they say, if everyone in the room agrees with you, you're probably in the wrong room. We have to be willing to hear things that might make us a little uncomfortable.
Exactly. Critical thinking means questioning your own biases and accepting that you might be wrong. It's about intellectual humility and recognizing that we never stop learning.
So we have to be skeptical not just of AI, but of ourselves and our own biases.
Precisely. We all have biases whether we realize it or not. The key is to be aware of them and try to minimize their impact on how we process information and make decisions.
So far, we've talked about skepticism, fact-checking, evaluating sources, and seeking out diverse perspectives.
Yeah.
Anything else we should be mindful of in this world of AI?
Yes. One more thing I want to emphasize is the importance of media literacy.
Media literacy, what exactly does that mean?
It's the ability to access, analyze, evaluate, and even create media. In today's world, it's about understanding how media works, how information is produced and disseminated, and how to engage with it critically.
So it's not just about passively consuming media, but understanding the mechanisms behind it, the forces that shape what we see.
Exactly. And by developing strong media literacy skills, we can become more informed consumers of information. We're less susceptible to manipulation and better equipped to navigate this complex landscape.
All of this is super important, but I gotta admit, it feels a bit overwhelming. Like we need to be constantly on guard, scrutinizing every single thing we come across.
I hear you. It can be daunting.
Yeah.
But remember, you don't have to do it all at once. Try incorporating these practices gradually.
Baby steps. Maybe focus on one skill at a time, like getting better at fact-checking or critically evaluating sources.
That's the idea. And remember, it's a journey, not a destination. Nobody becomes a master critical thinker overnight. It's all about forming good habits and approaching information with awareness and a critical eye.
Just like any skill, it takes practice to get better.
You got it. The more you practice, the easier it becomes.
I feel like I've already learned so much from our conversation. Thank you for explaining these concepts so clearly.
My pleasure. And remember, in this age of AI, we have the power to discern truth from fiction.
That's actually pretty empowering. So where do we go from here in our AI adventure?
Well, in the final part of our deep dive, we'll explore how AI developers are tackling these accuracy issues and working to make AI more reliable. Stay tuned.
Okay, so welcome back to the deep dive. We've been talking about these AI hallucinations. Those times when AI systems just totally go off the rails and spit out some seriously weird information.
Yeah, and we've covered why those errors happen, what kind of consequences they can have, and even how we as individuals can protect ourselves from being misled.
Right, but now I'm really interested in solutions. Are AI developers actually doing anything to fix these accuracy problems, or are they just kind of throwing their hands
Oh,
up?
they're definitely not giving up. There's a ton of research and development going on right now focused on making AI more trustworthy and reliable.
So tell me more. What are they focusing on?
Well, one big area is all about improving the quality of the data that's used to train AI models. Remember that whole garbage in, garbage out thing?
Yeah, so it's like giving AI a healthier diet, swapping out the junk food for some good nutritious stuff.
That's a great way to put it. They're working on techniques to actually identify and correct errors in existing data sets. And they're creating new data sets that are more diverse and more representative of the real world.
Makes sense. The better the data, the better the AI.
Yeah.
Right. What else are they working on?
Another big focus is on helping AI understand context and nuance. You know, like those examples from the BBC study where it seemed like the AI was just picking up on keywords without really getting the bigger picture.
Yeah, like when it thought Michael Mosley was dead, it definitely missed some crucial context there.
Exactly. So researchers are trying to teach AI how to see the connections between different pieces of information, understand things that aren't explicitly stated, and even pick up on sarcasm and humor.
Wow, so they're trying to teach AI to read between the lines, like a human.
That's exactly it. It means giving AI knowledge about how language is used in different situations, cultural norms, even social dynamics.
That sounds incredibly difficult. Even humans struggle with those things sometimes.
Well, it's a huge challenge. But there have been some breakthroughs in areas like natural language processing and sentiment analysis, which are helping AI understand the finer points of human communication a little better.
That's encouraging. So what can we expect to see in the future? Will we ever have AI that's completely free of these hallucinations?
That's the dream. But we have to remember AI is constantly evolving. There will always be new challenges and new areas where we need to improve.
So it's a journey, not a destination.
Yeah, but with all this ongoing research and development, I'm optimistic. We can definitely create AI systems that are more accurate, reliable, and ultimately more beneficial for society.
I agree. This whole deep dive has been so eye-opening. We've gone from AI fails to the complexities of data to the quest for teaching AI to understand context. It's clear that there's still a lot to figure out, but there's also a lot of potential for positive
Trying to
change.
set it better myself. And it's not just about the technology itself, but how we use it. We all have a role to play in shaping the future of AI and making sure it's used in a responsible and ethical way.
That's a great point. I think that's a perfect note to wrap things up on. Thank you so much for joining me on this fascinating exploration of AI hallucinations. It's been a pleasure.
It's been great talking with you. And to all our listeners out there, stay curious, keep asking those tough questions, and until next time, be sure to keep exploring the ever-evolving world of AI.